The Timeshift.
Hello and welcome to The Timeshift. I'm Chris Hall and this week we're looking at the latest episode of Doctor Who entitled Oxygen. Now this video is going to be a review of that episode, so if you've not seen it yet, this video is going to be spoiler heavy. So if you don't want this episode spoiled for you, it's best to switch this video off now. But for the rest of us, it's time to dive headfirst into Oxygen. Okay, dear viewer, I have to level with you here, and I have to let's just put aside any kind of jokes and wackiness aside for a moment. I have to share something with you, and it's not going to be easy for me to say, but I think that now we've reached a point in our relationship. I mean, we've known each other now for literally seconds, and at that point in any kind of good relationship, we have to start looking towards the future. What exactly we want out of our lives together, and it's why I've come to the conclusion that, well, you may laugh at this, but I think that we really need to have a child together. I know that this may seem sudden, and in the grand scheme of things, it may come as a shock to you, but I think that oh no, it would appear that evil space zombies without oxygen have appeared. Oh god, they're gonna do things to me, and oh no, my millennial plaid shirt is beeping. I'm running out of oxygen. Oh no, I'm conveniently dying in the opening sequence. This sets the tone and makes the episode sad at my death. I have to do something quickly. I need to disavow capitalism. Money is bad. Business is evil. A free market economy steals from the proletariat. Karl Marx had a swell beard. Wow, it worked. The evil space zombies have disappeared through the magic of crap special effects, and my shirt is no longer killing me. Thank you, Karl Marx. Okay, to stop frigging about and to actually talk about the episode itself, I have to say that I thought it was very... Well, I'm in two minds about it, to be honest with you. On the one hand, it was a perfectly fine episode of Doctor Who. It ticked all the right boxes. It went from point A to point B without falling flat on its face. But on the other side of things, I felt that it was an episode which was, whilst it was fine in and of itself, it felt to me as though it was certainly lacking a lot of weight behind it. A lot of the opening quarter of this episode was spent with very lofty dialogue. This episode begins with a riff on the "Space, the Final Frontier" speech from Star Trek, which on the one half made me think that this episode was going to be a little bit more funny, a little bit more quirky, a little bit more of a curious energy towards it, but it didn't. It just, soon as that little gigglesome laugh appeared, started to become an actual genuine speech, which was a fine speech, which then developed into a weird discussion about how space wants to kill us, and a lot of lofty dialogue, which makes it feel as though the writer felt as though there was more to be said, and this episode had a greater artistic integrity to it than it really did have. I have to be honest, I have no issue with the writer themselves, Jamie Matheson. I think he's a fine enough writer. He saved Doctor Who for me. For those of you who are new to the Timeshift, I really did not rate Kill the Moon. I thought it was probably the worst episode of modern Doctor Who ever, if not one of the absolute worst Doctor Who stories there had ever been. When I saw the episode, I was filled with such rage that I was very close to quitting watching Doctor Who for good, and it was only from watching Mummy on the Orient Express that it saved the show for me. It made me want to watch the week after that and kept me running with the show. And since then, sadly, there hasn't really been that many episodes that he's written that has quite reached that peak for me. This week's episode is an episode which feels as though it wants to be a little bit more substantial, that it wants to have this moral story to it, that it wants to have this thing that it really wants to say, but it doesn't really say it in a way which on the one hand feels thought through and mature, and the other hand of it feels as though it has any kind of lasting impression towards me. We have a lot of lofty dialogue in the beginning of the episode which creates the illusion that there is something more to this episode, which there isn't really. This is an episode which, if we cut the whole political angle out of it, is an episode of Doctor Who which is lacking any mystery towards it. The moment we see the electronic bracelet on that one character's arm, we know this is going to be an episode about money, about bad business practices, about capitalism. That this is going to be an episode about evil businessmen rubbing their hands together with murderous glee, going, what evil things can we do to make money now? And even if they aren't in the episode themselves, that kind of impact is going to be felt within the episode itself. So as that regards, there is no kind of moment where we have the sudden, oh my god, this is what the episode is about kind of deal. There is no kind of, it could be A which is causing the problem, or it could be B that is causing the problem. Even though they flirt with the idea through various different moments within the episode to create the illusion that there is a mystery here. At various different moments they pose the question that it may be, it might be hackers, or it might be technical difficulties. But then it has no evidence that that could be the case. If we are going to have an episode, a mystery of anything in any kind of TV program, we need to have these red herrings. We need to have these moments where it suggests that it could be something else other than what it really is about. Pretty much from the moment this episode starts, we know it's going to be about evil businessmen, it's going to be about capitalism, it's going to be about bad business practices, and it doesn't really do anything from there on. This feels like an episode which is born out of a joke. You know, you hear it now and again, maybe an older relative, maybe you yourself have said, when you're going through your finances, going through your receipts, your tax returns, going, you know, next thing, they'll be charging us for breathing next. They base an entire episode around that, which is fine. But if you are going to have an episode which doesn't really have a mystery towards it, which says loud and proud, this is what the episode is about, I feel as though you need to have more things in addition to that. If this is going to be an episode about bad business practices and evil businessmen, then we need more examples upon that. You need to have a moment where a character is struggling to get something to eat. They're going up to their vending machine and everything is ridiculously priced. And at the end of it, they say, oh, it's Friday, I'm really going to treat myself today. And they think, oh, what am I going to have? And the doctor and the bill, and they're like, a treat day, eh? What are you going to get yourself? Oh, I know I shouldn't, but I should really treat myself. It's been a horrible week for me. And they go into the machine and they press the buttons, and then they only get like a mini portion of something, like a little thimble of orange juice and maybe a couple like space age nutrient pills, and they're like, oh, this is your big treat. And they, yeah, this is all I can afford. You know, things like that to add to this moral. Otherwise, it's just a case of, oh yeah, evil businessmen, they're charging for oxygen. That's it. And to be honest, the evil businessmen charging for oxygen thing doesn't really feel that convincing to me. I mean, yeah, at various moments in the episode, they do say, rather unconvincingly, that, oh yeah, it could be a technical difficulty, it could be glitches or hackers, which would be oddly well-timed given what's happened in the news recently, but still, you know, it could have been that. And it could have just been a horrible misunderstanding, that maybe the evil businessmen are not being evil, and it was just a malevolent AI or something bad happening within the software somehow, and then the doctor and everybody takes it the wrong way and think it's evil business people when it maybe isn't. Maybe Evil Co. isn't really evil. Maybe it's an acronym for something, or maybe it is a name from when they were evil, and the evil businessmen aren't really evil, and now they've caused a major rebellion which has cost millions and billions of lives based upon a misunderstanding. You know, that could be an interesting episode of Doctor Who. Something that started off as a noble gesture ends up spiralling out of control into something horrible and nasty. That could be an interesting episode. But a lot more interesting than this week's episode, where we know what the mystery is, we know what the big twist is, pretty much of an episode begins, and then nothing really develops thereafter it. And again, if we're going to cut the entire political side of things out of it, then, well, the big threat from this week's episode, the big thing that this episode is named after, doesn't really work either. This is an episode called Oxygen. This is an episode where the big visual images that we see at the start of the episode are the two fairly crap-looking, spinning zombie people who are spinning in space for some godforsaken reason, is the oxygen counter on that person's suit. And the big threat frequency throughout the episode is that, oh, you need to calm down, otherwise you're going to waste all your oxygen. Oh, if you don't put your helmet on, you're going to lose oxygen in space. The prospect of them suffocating never really becomes realised. I mean, we don't need the Doctor or Bill suddenly falling on the floor and dying, but maybe just an extra character. Someone has not been using their oxygen quite as sparingly. Maybe the oxygen canister they've got on the back gets damaged and we see someone suffocating. Then we get it driven home to us. Oh, we don't just have the problem of the killer robots, but we also actually do have the problem of the oxygen. Despite the fact they seem to be lacking oxygen, despite the fact we have this ticking clock element, it never really feels as lethal a problem as the killer zombie robots. The killer zombie robots are the big threat to this week's episode, despite the fact of we have this big speech by the Doctor about how space wants to kill us and all the horrible things that will happen if you get into a vacuum of space, which Bill miraculously doesn't seem to have had any kind of negative repercussions of. I mean, in a matter of seconds, it seemingly is that you die from not having your helmet on, from not having a pressurized suit on. But Bill seems perfectly fine. She survives it. It's only the Doctor that loses his sight. Of course, I can accept the Doctor not dying so easily in space because he's a spaceman. He is a Time Lord, he's an alien creature, so maybe his race is a little bit more durable to it. Maybe not generic anime character standing in space being able to do it, but, you know, at least he can survive a little bit more. But Bill, she goes into space, she doesn't have a helmet on, and then after, oh, she's fine. She's perfectly fine. And it's only the Doctor that has any kind of negative long-term repercussions of what's happening with him. This episode, like I say, isn't terrible, but it feels as though it's lacking certain elements to make it work. It doesn't really have a mystery, and if it isn't to have a mystery, then whatever this episode needs to be about, for me, needs to be developed fuller. Like I said, it needs to have more examples of capitalism gone awry if that's what this episode is supposed to be about. Or if it's supposed to be about something else, then that needs to be a lot more clear. I'm fairly confident this is business gone awry. There's absolutely no suggestion that it could be anything else other than that. And of course, within this episode, we have casual racism jokes, because I suppose we needed humour somewhere. So let us just have a guy with a CGI'd blue face, because that's not bloody face paint, given the way that it glows. But, you know, let's have casual racism jokes, because we need some humour here. We're evil space zombies, so let us have casual racism jokes, because we need something. You know, we could have been a slightly darkly comedic episode with almost RoboCop levels of capitalist satire, but no, with not anything like that. They're charging for oxygen now. You know, it's like that thing you said in that pub that time. Isn't that funny? You know? It's like that thing your parents say about them charging for oxygen. That's funny, right? Right? Okay, so time for the performance section. Any performances that stuck out to me? Not really. Peter Capaldi and Pearl Mackie, fantastic as always. To say they're fantastic at this point is kind of a laboured point. We don't really need to say it. The only performance that stuck out to me as being particularly bad was the woman in the opening bit where she was talking about having a baby with the man who survived through to the end, and the teary-eyed moment between the two of them, or at least between him and his zombified fiancée. Sure, why not? Why not? If we need a reason to be sad, let us be sad for these two characters whom we've never met before. You know, let us be sad for Larry and his girlfriend, who we don't know. We've only known for the couple of moments that they've been in the episode after she's had a great big "be sad now" level speech. I don't know. This episode, let's just go to the overview where we can at least look at it on a greater scheme. Okay, so the overview, and I'm going to be honest with you, I've spent the better half of maybe 15 minutes now trying to think of some way of surmising my thoughts to this week's episode in a way which isn't just me ranting and raving, waving my arms in the air, swearing and gurning at the camera as some people do on YouTube. I want to do something that's a little more substantial that you yourselves can get something a little bit more out of, that you can maybe discuss with me. If you yourself disagree with anything I've said or agree with it, by all means leave me a comment in whichever website you're watching this on. But the more I think about it, the more I simply dislike this episode, for two main reasons. One, it's an episode without a mystery. It is an episode which, from the moment it begins, we know what it's going to be about. We know what the big twist is. We know that the reason these people are dying is because of a lack of oxygen, and that lack of oxygen is due to it being charged to them. We know that from the beginning, so there's no sudden moment in the episode where we go, oh my god, it's due to that problem. We never have that moment. And there are no red herrings with which to suggest or to hint to us that there's something else going on within this episode when there frankly isn't. And the other problem is that if you are going to have an episode of Doctor Who, or indeed anything where there is no mystery, or to be more specific, if you're going to have an episode of Doctor Who or something else which is about a specific thing, which has a theme to it, either political, socially political, about history, contemporary issues, or whatever, then it needs to be substantial, that it needs to be fully developed beyond just a gag. This entire episode is based upon that gag, that joke that we often hear people say of saying, oh, they're going to start charging for the oxygen next, and that's it. That's the entirety of what this episode is. It's they're going to start charging for the oxygen next bit and nothing else. When if you are going to make an episode about how capitalism is going awry, about how people are being charged through the nose for basic human commodities, then do that. Make that more substantial. Have more examples upon that within within the episode itself. Otherwise, it is just a one gag episode. And it doesn't work as a one gag episode because the one gag isn't even developed or isn't really a threat. Oh, they're going to start charging for the oxygen next. Okay, that's a great idea. Let us roll with that. Oh, let us have a little timer on their bodies which shows how much oxygen they've got left. And okay, let's do that then. That will be the big threat. If they run out of oxygen and they have no means of paying for the oxygen, they're going to die. Okay, great, good, got it. So why is it that the major threat within this episode is killer robots? Killer robots should be the afterthought. Killer robots should be the additional problem. You know, it shouldn't be the main threat. The main threat should be them running out of oxygen, but it isn't. At no point do we ever have that as feeling the immediate threat. It's just a ticking clock element to just try and make it feel as though this problem has to be solved here and now, that there is a jeopardy, immediate jeopardy to the episode, when there isn't. All we could have done, all we needed was maybe just one character in the background just dying from a lack of oxygen, but we don't get that. Every single death of any kind of character in the background is due to the killer robot suits. That's it! Not the oxygen, which this episode is named after. So we got a one gag episode that doesn't even use the gag. You see where the problem is for me with this episode? Cut the political side of things out of it. Cut all that bullshit and that pandering and that pondering and anything else you want to say, any fancy words that probably are used incorrectly. Cut all that stuff out of it. We got an episode of Doctor Who where the central gag, the main point of it, the main threat, isn't even the main bloody threat. And that's the problem. That's the problem with the episode. Good God. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I got into a rant there, but that's the problem. A big threat in the episode, the thing that we get set up, is that the problem is a lack of oxygen. The lack of oxygen isn't what's killing people, it's robots. You're going to change those robots to anything. Cybermen, Daleks, and Tarans, Quarks, whatever. And that would have been, it would have had the same effect at the end of the day. Well, I'm sorry for getting angry. I'm sorry for being so bitter, but, you know, there's a problem that I'm having at the moment. And I should have been honest with you without this sooner. The problem is that I cannot see. I have gone blind.